Blog Talk Radio.
You're listening to Avon, WIIFY Right Now Radio. WIIFY, What's in It for You Right Now Radio is the premier Avon radio show that's all about helping you right now. Here to help, motivate, train, inspire, and empower you in your Avon business. So get ready to take your business to the next level. Now here's your host, Avon Independent Sales Rep, Southeast Regional Makeup Maven, and National Executive Unit Leader, Lisa Monoson.
Well, hello everybody and welcome back. Happy 2014, everybody. I'm so thrilled to be back on the show and sharing with you tonight. You know, with it being a new year, everybody always sets out to make their new goals. And I was reading something the other day that said that January 15th, most people have already given up or broken their New Year's resolutions. That is so sad. You know, I believe our journey just needs to continue from year to year, but with the new goals, you know, we can reset them. And ones that weren't met, you know, we need to reevaluate and adjust so they can be achieved. Now, tonight our subject is on finding your big, hairy goal. Yes, I said hairy, since sometimes they can feel daunting. You know, have no fear, though. We get the pleasure tonight to hear from the wonderful Lisa Wilber, Senior Executive Unit Leader with Avon. She's going to shed some light more on why you need to find your BHG, your big hairy goal. But before we do that, let me tell you a little bit more about Lisa in case you are new to Avon. Here's a little bit more about her and her success, which if you don't know who Lisa Wilber is, it has to be that you're new because she's a top person in Avon. So she's been selling products and recruiting new representatives with Avon since 1981 when she was about 18 years old. And she worked her Avon business part-time until 1998 when she got downsized out of her secretarial job. Her Avon income dramatically increased after 1993 when she joined Avon's multi-level marketing program, which is leadership. And she currently is this number 6 money earner in the country in the program with over 2,100-plus representatives in her downline. In 2007, she was given the highest honor awarded to an Avon representative by being named Woman of Enterprise, following by her receiving the Yellow Rose Award for dedication, courage, and strength and perseverance in 2013. Lisa was listed the number 12 most powerful women in direct sales in 2009, and her most recent project, which a lot of you I know have the books, which is the View from the Top, Volume 1, and most recently, A View from the Top, Volume 2 from Avon Senior Executive Unit Leaders. She's been co-authoring and audio interviewing. So I have always been so impressed with Lisa since the first day I saw her back on the Rich and First DVD that they had 13 years ago. So, Lisa, welcome so much to the show tonight. We're so glad you're here.
Well, thank you for having me.
We're really excited that you're going to share with us tonight. What a way to kick off 2014 is to have you on, so thank you again so much. Our shows go so quickly, and everybody knows to get out their notepads because we're going to jump right into it. So our show tonight is titled Finding Your Big Hairy Goal, your BHG. So, Lisa, can you tell us more about specifically the hairy part and finding your goal actually means?
Well, if you don't mind, I wanted to go backwards a little bit to when I first heard about setting goals of any kind. It was a program way back in 1985 when I first moved to New Hampshire. I met somebody who was doing, it was Paul Meyer's program called Personal Success Planner, and it was the dynamics of personal goal setting. I hadn't even heard of anything like that before, and this couple that I met was sitting next to me at the fair and was talking about it. So I bought the notebook, and that's actually where I first heard about even doing anything like that. And what they did was they have these sheets it's called Everything I Ever Wanted, and you're supposed to not narrow it down by what you think is possible, but to just take time over a couple days and list everything you ever wanted, not just material items, but could be places you want to go, people you want to meet, feelings you want to have, and you're supposed to just list it all. Just list and list and list. And my first list had hundreds. I think it was on it. And then it goes about in the program narrowing it down to what you actually want to work on next. why I talked about with you the big hairy goal is because I think what I found out over the years is that I picked a goal and worked on it and got it. Picked another goal, worked on it and got it. But I was thinking too small, I think. Some of my goals more recently have been bigger. But even now, I know I'm kicking myself because when I pick a goal and really set my sights on it, I get it. So why aren't I picking big, giant goals? So now big, hairy goal is something I think we all need to work on is picking bigger goals.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Can you share with us a little bit about one of the first goals you achieved and if there was anything you had to give up during that time to achieve it or do differently to achieve it?
Well, one of the goals that was most memorable that I worked on was before I got my S on as a senior executive unit leader, I was up here in New Hampshire doing leadership, and I knew that's what I wanted was to make senior. I didn't want to get into leadership when it first came out. I actually dragged my feet because I thought this is going to be funny now, but I thought it was going to be the ruination of the company. And I know. So I didn't want to do it. It took a lot of learning about what multi-level marketing was and learning what we could and couldn't do. And what I thought network marketing was that you invite people over your house and then you trick them into showing them an opportunity because that's what had been done to me.
Right.
You know, it was water filters, and I thought I was going to someone's house to eat supper, and I was getting pitched water filters. So I thought, if that's what this is, I don't want nothing to do with that. So it took me about a year of research before I dove into Avon's leadership program. I had already been selling for years and years. Now, so my goal, what I decided I was going to do is make senior before I decided whether it was worth it or not. And I really think that has helped me tremendously by helping me get past the I want to quit thing. Because I wanted to quit every single day of that between joining leadership and making senior. I mean, there wasn't any day I don't think it was fabulous. It sucked at the beginning. You know, you're putting more money out than you thought you were going to. People stand you up, people lie, people do all kind of stuff. And at the beginning, I don't think you realize that's going to happen. So I decided early, right when I was getting in, that I was going to make senior first because I knew the bigger money was at senior. So how I chose to visualize that is I was driving a Yugo, which I don't know if you remember those. That was early 80s. But they were cars that were like $39.95, brand new. They were little two-door cars that were not very much money, and they broke down a lot, and I had to push start it a lot. I had a lot of customers help me push start it. But so what I decided was I was going to focus on the car allowance. So I got a little toy van because that's what I was going to buy with my car allowance at senior. And right now, by the way, they call that the senior allowance. I don't think they call it a car allowance. The senior bonus, I think. But then they called it the car allowance. So what I did was get a little toy van. I painted it with white paint so that it looked like how I wanted the big one to look. And then I took markers and I lettered it to say Avon and my phone number, just like the big one was going to look. And I even did like the little teeny license plate, just like my real license plate was going to look. So, and I carried it around with me all the time. I carried it on the dashboard. When I went out to lunch with someone, I carried it with me. And, of course, when I had it with me all the time, everybody asked me about it. And customers really got a big kick out of it, too, because, of course, half of the time I had their husbands help push start in my Yugo. So they were all wanting to help me. You know, they said, oh, if I buy an extra lipstick, maybe you can get a real car pretty soon. You know, they all wanted to pitch in and help me because I looked like I was giving it my best go. And I think that really helped pull me through is having a visual thing to look at. It helped me not want to give up when I felt like giving up. So, and I did get the van, by the way. It was yeah, it was great. The day that I made senior, actually, I can't tell you anything about the days when I made advanced or exec because I didn't pay any attention to those. I only cared about senior. I have no idea how long I was at those levels or when I made those levels because I didn't care. I only cared about senior. At that time, that was my big thing, and I didn't know there weren't a lot of them back then either. I made it in March 94, and I didn't realize that I was the first one on the Northeast to make it. I thought there were a bunch of others, and I was joining a big club. You know, I didn't realize I was the first one on the East Coast to make it. But it was funny because the two campaigns right before I actually made the title, I missed it by just a little bit. And I remember the lady down at the Newark branch, I talked to her on the phone, and we didn't have the Internet. We didn't have YourAvon.com, so, of course, we didn't have Downline Manager or anything. I relied on her telling me on the phone, you know, what I missed it by or how close I was, and we got the paper statements in the mail later. And I remember the day I did get it. She called me on the phone because we'd, of course, commiserated when I missed it the last couple campaigns. So when she called me to tell me that I got it, I didn't believe her. So she had to do print screen on the computer and then fax me, because I did have a fax machine. She faxed me the print screen that showed my name and the title, Senior Executive Unit Leader. So, I mean, it was, I remember that. I think when you have something that's burned in your brain like the big, hairy goal, which was senior, I mean, I remember everything about that day when I got it. And it's funny, I only concentrated on that, and that really helped. The focus really helped.
Right, and I think you have to learn also, you know, on your journey or, you know, even now, we have to learn to have that thick skin, right? I'm sure you faced a lot of...
Well, and deciding ahead that you're not going to give up. I mean, that's the only way you'll actually not make it is if you give up.
Right.
And it's hard. It's hard when... I think that the hardest part that I didn't count on was everybody else telling me I had no chance. I didn't realize everybody was going to say that to me, and everybody still says it to me now when I try to come out with a project. Matter of fact, the View from the Top book, when I wanted to put together the first book, I had people, even my own mom, she said, you're never going to be able to get that many seniors that want to go in and do a project like that. And I said, I'm willing to keep at it until it does happen. And I think that makes the difference when you decide that you want it bad enough that you're just going to keep at it until. You know, I like to tell some of my leaders, until you reach it. I like to tell some of my leaders, you know, when you have a small child, you don't say, well, you know what, I'm going to teach it to walk, but if it doesn't get it in, 3-4 months, that's just it. They can just crawl from then on. No, you don't say that. You say, I'm going to keep working with my baby until they walk. There's just no other alternative. You're just going to do it until. And I think that's how you have to look at your business goals too. There has to be an until, and there's make yourself no escape route.
And I think a lot of people, absolutely, and I think that a lot of people also have the fear, Lisa, the fear that they're going to fail, and so they don't set their goals. So, what would you say to somebody that's, worried about setting goals because they're like, well, if I set them, and then I fail, then, I'm sure you would agree that that's probably one of the big reasons people don't set them. It's because of failure. And then what would you say to them to help them best overcome the fear?
I'm not sure it's still a fear of failure that's stopping them. I actually think it's fear of success. They can't see themselves being the successful person they wanted to be. So, like, I know somebody that she's made exec a bunch of times, and she hasn't made senior because she can't see herself as a senior. And I think you have to own it before you're going to get it. So you almost sabotage yourself because you're afraid of you won't be able to hold up your end, you won't be able to measure up when you go to a meeting and there are other seniors there. I think a lot of people sabotage themselves not for fear of failing, but fear of succeeding. They're afraid that they won't be able to measure up once they get there. And I'm saying to everybody that's listening, go ahead and push through that, because you will be able to get the experience. Once you've made it, you will be able to choke down the fears, and you will be able to fake it till you make it. Every time I go to a senior event, I always think, oh, geez, when they figure out it's just little old me from New Hampshire, they'll probably kick me out. I don't feel like worthy to be in the room either. So don't think that that's necessary to make your goal. All of it's going to be uncomfortable. So there's not just the fear of failure, but I think that a lot of people, it's the fear of success. They sabotage themselves because they don't realize they do deserve it. They do deserve to get the goal at the end of working hard.
Mm-hmm. And I think also, I hear you. I hear you. And I think also there is something that with long-term goals, there's people that they are only looking like at some people look at just the short term, and some people looking at the long term. There's a difference in the right now goals and the long-term vision goals. So how do you help people separate the two in their mindset? Because I think if they have something to earn along the way, it's kind of like, I don't know, if they have an orchard or something, and they get little rewards along the way because the apples come. But they're not looking at the full harvest, excuse me, that's coming from it. So what would be the way to separate the two? Excuse me.
Well, I think, some personality thing, too, because I don't know if everybody, like some people want to celebrate advance and exec on the way to senior and can't really do what I did as far as I didn't care about those. I didn't need a celebration along the way. To me, it was a do-or-die situation. I was going to make senior, and that was all there was to it. Once I made it in my head that was going to happen, no matter what, I didn't care about anything but that. If you were around me back then, it had to have been a pain for everybody around me. It's all I talked about. It's all I thought about, and every day I got up to see how close I was to it. So I would put out the tree of how many I needed to have, where they were going, what was I going to do today to make it closer to senior. Everything was about senior. So I think it depends on the person if they need to know their own personality and know if they need a reward along the way. You know what I mean? So
right.
Yes, I think that's important to celebrate milestones or have things along the way, but each person has to know themselves. I think it's the commitment, when you say, well, I'm going to do it, and that's just the end of it. It's going to happen. There's no going back from this. So I had that discussion with when we were doing Volume 2 and putting together the seniors for Volume 2, the second book of A View from the Top. My mother said, you're not going to be able to find another 25. And I said, well, I'm not going to stop until I get the other 25. So, that's going to happen because if I never stop until I get it, I'm going to have it because there's no way I won't have stopped. So yeah. I think it's, making the big commitment. And then, yes, I was happy for each one that came on board. And but to me, I can look at the bigger goal, my personality, I guess. I can look at the bigger goal and be happy to go after it single-focused and not necessarily have to have the smaller goals. But I think each person has to, do it the way their personality is.
Right. And I think Avon, has been putting these great little rewards for us on the table as well along the way. And I think that helps those that might need to be motivated by incentives and things like that along the way, as they're looking towards their bigger goals. And, a lot of times, too, we have to put like a mark, a stamp, a deadline on the goals. So when you talk about being specific with goals, how do you, even for yourself, do you put a deadline on your goals when you're still doing them to this day? Because I'm sure you're still, creating goals for yourself even now.
Absolutely. And not everything has a date specific, but like I still do like I was telling about in the planner, the everything I ever wanted list, and then I narrow it down to what's going to be over the next 3 months, what's going to be the next 6 months, and then you'd have like a year out, 2 years out, 5 years out, 10 years out. So some things, and then you have all the different categories of your life, not just work, but you have goals for each of the personal things in your life that you're working on too. And some things have specific date goals for me. Some things have amount goals that I'm working for. So like my BHG right now is I want to bring in $1 million in 1 year. And that's a leap for me to a point because my biggest year ever up to this point is right around $400,000 for 1 year to bring in. So that's quite a big gap between $400,000 and $1 million. But it's something I have in my brain that I absolutely have to do. So when I get
but that's nothing to scoff at. People, $400,000 a year. Wow. That's amazing.
Well, that's all sources of income. Well, what makes it amazing to me is I'm thinking now that I wasn't thinking big enough early enough, because I went from being what my lowest paid job I think was the convenience store worker. I earned about $6,000 in a year, and then my highest paid job where I had another boss was as a secretary, and my biggest year was $20,000, and then plus benefits and stuff. But if I'm capable of earning $400,000 now, who's to say what the limit is here? So
right.
$1 million is just like my first jump point that I'm aiming for. But I tend to think now that there's not limits a lot more than I used to think. Before I thought of myself as a trailer park living secretary, driving a Yugo. Right. And now I think that I have the ability to develop my skills to earn the kind of money that I'm looking to earn. I have that ability to do that, and I feel good about that. The more I earn, the more I feel good about that ability. Mm-hmm. So I think everybody has to come about that. That's why you have to continually listen to shows like yours and go to seminars and read books and do all kind of things to increase your knowledge of the business and the way you feel about yourself. Because I'll tell you, one of the hardest things for me to do is to go from getting a paycheck for a convenience store work week, which is like $100-something, to getting last campaign I earned $10,100 for 2 weeks. Ooh. For me to go from one extreme to the other without losing my mind and sabotaging myself takes continual work, because I have to be able to say, yes, I'm worth that kind of money, or I'll mess myself up. I think there's no way around it. You have to continually read and listen to positive things and go to seminars. And I just think you have to surround yourself with things that make you a better person so that you feel good about how you earn it and you feel you earned it. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And in your 33 years, that you've been with Avon, what would you say to the person that's having really hard time with the belief and believing in themselves that they can actually make their goals? And, when you're talking about, you're making $10,000 plus every 2 weeks in your, residual earnings checks, what do you say to somebody that's just starting or somebody that's been struggling and going, that's never, they don't have that belief? What would you say to them that when it comes to Avon?
Well, and it's back to the thing we started with, don't shoot too low, because I see people spend too many years in unit leader land, and then they get stuck at each level because they don't see themselves at the higher levels. So, I think that's what we've been saying a lot of, is that people aren't setting their goals high enough. So, sorry about that noise in the background. My 8-year-old daughter got a remote control car for Christmas. It's actually the Avon one.
There you go. She's having fun with it. What do you say to people who just go by the seat of their pants in business and in life, Lisa?
It's not that that's a bad thing, but I think you wouldn't necessarily leave your house and say, well, I just think I'll head out west. Or worse yet, buy a plane ticket on a plane, and then the pilot says, well, let's just head out west. I don't know where we'll stop. I'm not sure. So you want the pilot to say, I'm going to land at Los Angeles International Airport at 3:05 p.m. at Gate B. You know, if you don't know what you're shooting for, you won't even know when you've got it. So I think it's important to nail down what you're working for very specifically, or you won't even know when you got it. You won't know if you're on your way to it. I mean, you won't even know if you're headed in the right direction if you don't know where you're headed. So I think having goals and making lists and doing plans is important. Of course, I want to add here that taking action on those, though, is one of the most important things, because I see a lot of people have analysis paralysis. They're so busy planning that they never actually implement. And don't be afraid to fall on your face. I failed plenty. I do projects that don't work out. Matter of fact, I lost about $300,000 having a Curves franchise because it sounded like a good fit for me. It sounded like a good idea, and I lost a lot of money on that because it wasn't a good fit. So, but I don't necessarily go around telling about the things I do that mess up, so people get the idea that I never fall on my face, and that is so not true. So don't be afraid. You know, don't be afraid to try stuff just because you think you might fail, because there's nothing wrong with failure. If you're not failing, you're not trying.
Right. And one last question before we go, because I can't believe we're down to the last. If you can just answer this real quick, and then how can we best teach others, you know, to learn for them to dream bigger? Because they're, like I said, a lot of people just put up this wall.
Well, I'm going to say the same thing, and it would be the same answer whether it was goals or any other performance thing that you want someone else to do in your group, is you have to set the example yourself. So you have to show them your dream collage. You have to be talking about your goals all the time. You have to, you know, post that on Facebook, what you're working for and your plans on how you're working for it. I think setting an example is one of the most powerful things we can do, whether you're talking about goal setting or selling or recruiting or whatever you're talking about. If you're not doing it too, I don't think anybody that is following you will do it either.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, I am just like, everything that you've said tonight, I'm sure has enlightened so many people. I bet they've got a notebook full of notes. Our shows always go so quick. So I want to thank you so much again for being here tonight. And, you know, if everybody would like to head on over to the Facebook event after, you know, the show here tonight, you can post your questions, your comments. You can chat with Lisa over at Facebook. We would love to hear from you and how the show went for you tonight. And I want to remind everybody also, and thank you again, Lisa, so much for being on. I really appreciate, with your busy schedule, you saying yes. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And also I want to remind everybody that next week we have Senior Executive Unit Leader Lori Yannick on the call. She will be on January 16th with Replacing Your Full-Time Salary with Your Avon Earnings. So, Lisa, thank you so much again, and we'll see you guys next week. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you for tuning in to Avon WIIFY Right Now Radio with your host, Lisa Monoson. Stay tuned for new shows, guests, and topics airing Thursdays at 6:30.